as I was having this memory, I was like, wow, I've been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a situation where I felt pressured to do something that I didn't want to do. And it was my choice. I stayed there, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
because I'm 18 and we're trying to figure things out, but it was the first time that I had really like honor that and
Mm-hmm.
allowed myself to just like cry about it. Like,
Mm-hmm. All right, hello everyone. I am Pammy, and this is the Psychedelic Sisterhood. I'm starting a series of podcasts where I speak with friends and colleagues about their psychedelic journeys, whether they're just starting their journey or they're well within their journey and have a lot of information to share. And with me today, I have my friend Madge here. Hello.
hey, thank you for having me.
Of course. And Madge is starting a podcast called Unsettled Freedom Village. I'll let you talk about that if you'd like. And she also has a crochet. Is it an Etsy or
We
Instagram?
right now we're just on Instagram and we
Instagram.
go and sell in the streets too.
Yeah, called Handcraft Creeps. Super cute. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to chat about your mushroom journey. I would like to start off by asking when did you start your journey? When did you start dabbling in mushrooms and why mushrooms over any other psychedelic?
Yeah, so I like dove right in. I was 19 years old. I had just come to the city. I grew up in Rochester, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and then came to New York originally to go to acting school. And so I was in a program, and me and a bunch of the girls in the dorm, none of us had ever tripped before, but we had all heard about psychedelics.
That's how it always
I knew,
starts.
yeah, I knew it was kind of funny. Before I left for school that year, someone offered me them.
Mm,
And I said no because I had this like intuition feeling that whatever was going to come up was going to be intense. And I
mm,
knew that like before going to school, I just didn't want to throw anything else like at myself.
mm,
But it had been like a month since school had passed. I'd kind of started feeling my groove, kind of had my little like nook set up.
mm,
And yeah, there was like five of us, all artists. It was like one of these like weird artsy schools, so definitely some characters involved
That was
there.
a school upstate or here
Here
in
in
New
the
York City?
city,
Ah,
here
nice.
in
Which
the city,
which
yeah,
which
it was
school?
the new school.
Ah, okay, cool, cool.
Yeah. I've since left, but that's part of the trip actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we made, I think, why, to answer your question of why shrooms over anything else, I've always felt a sense of trust of anything that grows in the earth. I think that's what validated like weed for me. And even versus alcohol, like the idea of it being a plant is, and especially it being foreign, that was more comforting than like some chemicals made on like a sheet in a lab.
Mm-hmm. There's some random powders that could be mixed with it,
Yeah,
just
like it
about
didn't make as much,
anything.
it still doesn't really make sense to me. I don't really know how it works, but yeah, so we made a big cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
and we all went in a circle and drank it. We wrote our intentions, and I remember it hit everybody else before it hit me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. So everyone, they started getting giggly, laughy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of sober, like chilling.
You're like, I
And
want to feel what you guys are feeling.
yeah, and then that second hour hit, and I feel like, there's that come up, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, now here's time for the show.
Yeah.
Like whatever you got to deal with, it's your time now. So, everyone in the group, that second hour hit, and they started going into their own things, and then it started to hit for me. But I was just coming up now, so I was a little behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I need to go. I need to go on my own. It was like
Leave the room?
I put on some clothes and I grabbed my phone and I set out to Times Square by myself.
What? Times Square of all places.
Times Square of all, just some basic, like, she ain't a New Yorker yet type. But my friends looked at me and they were like, are you crazy? Like, and I was like, no. I was like, I need to do this. And that choice I find very symbolic now, looking back at the story of being able to like look around at my surroundings, being like, I could stay here, but I'm going to actively choose to like leave. And the phrase is all you, baby. It's all you. Just kept repeating in my head. And that was kind of my mantra for the trip of understanding like things look different. I imagine as my thoughts in my head were just like sped up. I liked what you said, the spiral of in introspection had started, but just I kept repeating, it's all you. Like there's no outside crazy things that it's going to come in. Like everything that's in your brain is coming from your brain. And that provided a sense of like, okay, you, Margaret, like, you, like, you got it. And eventually I made my way back. I had journeyed long and far on foot, walking around the city, thinking my things. But I just, and then getting back home, finishing up that trip, led me to a further realization of why I'm in school and what my purpose is. And I think it was the first time in my life that I was really thinking, how can I best serve others? Like how the idea of serving became really relevant. And how can I use my talents and my potentials to really build something strong and grow. And at the time, I'd grown up acting and grown up in the theater, but I was really starting to blossom from there and started to realize like maybe being an actor isn't gonna be the strongest path for me. And it was the first time that I'd kind of allowed myself to think that.
Because that's what you came to New York for?
Yeah. Or so I thought, right? Or so I thought.
So did that kind of start you on a path of sort of trying to figure out what exactly was coming up as far as what you wanted to do next? Did that come organically, or did you really have to search at that point?
I think shrooms, and on trips that I've gone on since then, shrooms has allowed me to allow certain thoughts. So I think just the prospect of like, okay, what would I do if I did leave school? What else could I be doing? And allow myself not to feel guilty about it. I mean, I have a lot of opinions about higher education and the cost of higher education. I think it's a scam. And I think a lot of these programs are manipulating kids into signing away, their savings and therefore their time and therefore their lives. And so allowing myself to like really admit that I could be going down that route if I don't pull myself out now of getting out of debt. But also for me, the idea of like acting is all about telling other people's stories. And at the time I felt like I really hadn't had a story of my own. And so part of that decision, in the months following that shroom trip, I started to put things into line. Okay, what could I do if I left? And that led the next year to me packing my bags at 20 and hitchhiking around different countries for the next like year or so, and just
Wow.
living off my backpack.
And was that to sort of just kind of find yourself in a sense, or was just an extended vacation? Like, what spurred this
No,
idea of this is,
I
I'm
I
gonna go
think
here?
yeah, I think traveling and vacations are two separate
Totally
things.
different things.
Yeah, genuinely. I think it has to do with like intention,
Mm.
and my intention was not to relax. It was
Mm.
to engage, to learn, to inquire, uh,
Mm.
to work, also to volunteer. I had a goal of doing it very cheaply, so I didn't stay in any hotels.
Mm.
Um, and I did a lot of couch surfing, and just like kind of like work exchange programs. So it was really just like I just became way more curious about, I think, the world around me, and just wanted to go play with that.
Yeah, that's amazing and terrifying. But it's like so great when you can just like you get that gumption and just be like, well, this is something that I know is going to have a huge impact. It's going to set my path for my future. Let's just do this. As terrifying as it is, it's also exciting.
Like that, me setting off to Times Square.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you
It
said
was
that earlier. It was just the beginning of.
that same thing, of being like,
Yeah.
okay, this is fucking scary and I don't know where I am, but
Mm,
it's all me and we're gonna do it. And I know that if I get through this, it's gonna be worth it.
mm-hmm.
And not only
Mm-hmm.
get through it, but because I feel like it's not about getting through shrooms, it's about like embracing it.
Having the courage to embrace it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. Are you familiar with Henry Rollins at all?
Mm-mm.
So Henry Rollins, he was the lead singer of I guess you can consider it heavy metal. I just call it I think it's metal. Um, band back in the late '80s, early '90s. They're pretty popular, but at some point he just after his band he left his band. He just went and dropped himself in the middle of nowhere periodically every couple of months to kind of just learn and from like wherever cultural place he was, and just like kind of be of service. And he didn't do any of the kind of like jobs within the area, but he would like sit and write and like just collect information and see how people lived. And I think he was a military kid growing up, so he was used to bouncing around anyhow during his early years. So I think this was like a continuation of kind of like just going someplace random out of your semi out of your control, but learning to adapt and like having a newfound understanding, not knowing the language, and just starting to learn about this whole new culture. And I think that sort of, and he's much older now, so it's kind of interesting that's kind of like it's almost like no matter what age you are or what phase of life you are, there's still lots of opportunity to grow no matter what.
Yeah.
And I love that about his journey. And I love that about your journey. It's like, even though you were set to go to school, you knew that wasn't your journey at that moment. Your journey was to, go off and learn from other, countries and other, cultures, other languages, other spaces, and just to really embrace life.
I went to Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and I met some of my relatives, which was cool. And then I kind of did some of Eastern Europe, Italy, Ireland, and then I ended up in Morocco. And I
Mm.
lived in Morocco for like 4 months.
Ooh, how was that? Morocco's
It was
beautiful.
beautiful. It was
Mm.
beautiful. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people.
Mm.
Um, I did not take any shrooms there. I feel like that was on a trip of its own. Um,
They have some temples there, I want to say, that are just a trip with on nothing.
the mosques,
Yeah,
yeah.
the mosques, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's just you go in and it's just like, awe-inspiring how much, like, how intricate some of the designs are. some of the architecture. It's beautiful. And so, since that experience, how did shrooms come up after that? How did shrooms work its way into your life's journey after that initial experience?
Great question. I think first of all, like after I had done the first one, it was like, okay, shrooms isn't this like big bad scary thing that I had been told all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after
Big
that,
on that.
I became more of an advocate for it. So I was more comfortable talking about it in my regular life. So how it came up was way more natural in conversation,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like kind of like the point of your podcast that you were telling me before is like to normalize positive and healing experiences, and so
Mm-hmm.
people will know about it. Um, so I think, and once people realize that you're open to it, then it's like, oh, we should trip or something should come up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but honestly, since my trip, it's been individual healing experiences each time.
Oh, I was gonna ask too, your amounts that you usually take. Do you weigh it out, or do you take something specific, or it's just like a couple caps and stems and a
Yeah, I feel like
tea,
it's
or
more of like a couple, whatever we get, we'll like divide it up,
evenly?
the
Mm-hmm.
caps and stems. I've never done, I'm not good with the math
Mm-hmm.
of it. Usually there's someone else there that
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit better than
Someone
that.
else has a scale. Let them deal.
Yeah.
That was the reason I was asking, because I was going to ask next if you had a heroic dose at all, which is like 5 grams. And I haven't gotten there yet. I'll be honest with you, pretty terrified of a heroic dose. I've only done like, I don't know, maybe half a palm of caps and stems at the most, nothing exceeding that. And I had some pretty good experiences, some not necessarily super profound, but just moments that were bringing me to center and realigning me with my purpose. Like
Mm.
last 2 years ago, I actually went up to Cosm and on my birthday, and I had mushrooms for my birth, like the sunrise for my birthday, and I knew I was on this path of starting this organization and starting. I knew I wanted to start something. I just didn't know what. And I was like at a 9 to 5 at the time, and I had some other things, and I was helping other friends with their projects, and I was trying to like jumpstart my creativity as well, because I paint on the side and I do a few other things. I'm just like, I'm all over the place. I want to harness this creative energy and really push something through that's really going to be community based, that's going to help people. But I just didn't know where to start, and I just didn't understand how. And I get very in my head about like, this is how it has to be. It's supposed to be like this, and this is how other people are doing it. And when I took those mushrooms, it was just like, just do it however you're doing it, and that's how it's done. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm thinking way too hard on this. And it kind of just brought me back to the initial feeling of why I wanted to start it and why I wanted to bring people together. And I think with all the overthinking that was getting so lost and buried under, the ifs, whys, and hows, and it was just, it's very simple. If you
I
care, if you have
I
the love,
view
it's there.
I view shrooms as like, and psychedelics as
Mm-hmm.
like, if all our thoughts and our ideas and our things are like bubbling at the surface,
Mm-hmm.
the shrooms is just like the lid that's taken off the cap that allows the
Ah.
steam to just like go out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I kind of imagine us as just these like bubbling, boiling pots of water. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just need one little lift up to be like, go, release, do
You
the
release
thing.
the pressure.
Thinking about, you mentioned before, like moments of healing
Mm-hmm.
that you've had, and I wanted to share one
Yes.
story.
Yes. Yes.
I remember it was a couple, I think it was like during the quarantine. It was during the quarantine because I remember we were inside for a lot of it, but again,
Mm-hmm.
like the sun coming in, and I was just laying there with my partner, and I was laying next to her, and I had my hand like on her wrist,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I started kissing her wrist, and then I started licking it, And all of a sudden, I was triggered by past experience I've had giving blowjobs.
Oh.
And I just started crying. And I
Mm.
didn't even know I was crying.
Mm.
And my tongue was just like licking her wrist. And I realized that I had some really traumatic negative experiences with some guys.
Mm.
Um, when I was like 18, 17, that I think in the world of sexual abuse and with Me Too, sometimes we can compare our stories.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God, I was never raped or anything. And so I think I just ignored like, oh, I didn't experience that.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was having this memory, I was like, wow, I've been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a situation where I felt pressured to do something that I didn't want to do. And it was my choice. I stayed there, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
because I'm 18 and we're trying to figure things out, but it was the first time that I had really like honored that and
Mm-hmm.
allowed myself to just like cry about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even though
Yeah.
I'm in this beautiful relationship now with this amazing girl, and
Mm.
but to just, yeah, to honor that. And then we talked about it, you know what I mean? We talked
Mm-hmm.
about it, what had happened and how that's changed, and how I still want to be in relationships maybe with guys going forward, and so how that's going to move. And
Mm.
but it just felt like that steam kind of being taken off, and in such a weird way it triggered that, like, why am I
Yeah.
sitting here licking someone's wrist?
However it comes up, that's how it comes up. And I think that's the huge proponent of what I do love about psychedelics, is because maybe, like you said, you compared and you hadn't put that thought of what happened to you as something that was significant compared to someone else's, say, rape journey. And even though it wasn't a rape, it was still very significant. And we pushed those things down and we kind of shoved them off and shoved them away, being like, you're just, you're being this way, you're being that way. Similarly, I've had similar experiences where I had to come to terms with, moments of where, you're young and you're like, well, this is what people do. I guess I need to do it. And you're really not enjoying yourself, but it's happening. And I don't know, porn or, television tells you that's what you're supposed to be doing. And it feels awful and wrong, but it's like you're so young and you just don't understand that's a trauma that's happening, that's currently being built right there.
Yeah, and I
And
feel that there's so much shame around talking about some of
shame as
the
well.
the minuscule things. Like even me
Mm.
saying blowjob on this podcast, I'm like, oh my God, my mom might, like, but, but I'm
You said a
like,
host of worse things, trust me.
no, but it's like, no, I should be able to say that. And
Mm.
I feel like the only way that we let other women know that they're not alone, or honestly, I feel like I'm really out here talking to the younger girls than me,
Mm.
that like, you don't have to wait till you're in an extreme situation to stand up for yourself, and
Absolutely.
that there's other quieter moments of sexual pressure and
Mm-hmm.
oppression
Oh,
that
for
are
sure.
also really valid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we can bring it up in openly in a space like this. I think it helps people to start that conversation on their own and feel comfortable enough bringing it up on their own. And maybe this conversation will trigger someone in a good way, and they'll think about, oh yeah, there's this moment I really need to like unpack that. On a previous podcast, I was speaking with my friend about something that I hadn't thought about that triggered me and that came up. And I was like, oh, at the time, you don't think about it. And then it just, like you said, randomly comes up and you're like, that wasn't right. That should not have happened. And you kind of have to work through it. And those things that you think are, say, insignificant at the time, or things that you thought you've been past and healed, maybe they're not, because a lot of things that were happening in my past, they keep coming up and affecting relationships in my present,
Yeah.
or will continue to affect my relationships in the future because I'm not looking at it. So I'm really hoping, I never wish to trigger people, but possibly triggering in a good way will help things come up and help people examine things openly and not feel ashamed about them or feel guilty
Yeah, and
about
I
them.
and I think I'm so blessed that Shrooms allowed me to think about that
Mm-hmm.
and not feel shame that I was crying, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or
And props to your partner for supporting you in those moments. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and she wants to be a psychedelic therapist as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So her view, I feel like she was like the best person to do it. And honestly, being in a relationship with her has taught me so much about the professional validity
Mm-hmm.
of shrooms. And honestly, going into the future, like more conversations with this are going to be happening because I really do believe it's going to be legal in more places.
Absolutely.
And she's getting her degree in social work from Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
And I give her shit all the time because you heard my whole spiel on like higher
Yeah.
education being a scam with the price, you know what I mean? And here's my girlfriend like thousands and thousands of dollars of debt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But her whole thing is like that name is gonna people take me seriously
Yeah, absolutely.
and will take me seriously. And she's like, I'm gonna be able to step into more professional environments
Mm-hmm.
and be like, shrooms are a way of healing, and this is how I want to help heal people.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing it from that perspective, as well spoken as I can sound, I don't have a degree, I don't have an accreditation that would make someone that doesn't know me want to listen to me,
Mm-hmm.
but with that kind of
Which honestly, in a sense, that is unfortunate. I think to prejudge someone based on what degree they do or don't have, or what certificate they do or don't have, not even understanding how they work is unfortunate. I mean, of course, it bypasses you having to get to know someone and what they do, because you automatically say, oh, well, they have this certificate or whatever, so I know at least this bit of
yeah.
validity is
I guess
there.
it's also
However,
oh, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I was
I
gonna
was gonna
say.
say, oh, it's also speaking in terms of like funding
Hmm.
and like grants and
Hmm.
like in order to get through certain literally application processes, like they sift people out. Like, you don't have a high school degree, we're not even going to consider it.
True.
And I guess when you're thinking about terms of money, like, and you're trying to give away a $10,000 grant, how else are you going to sift through people, like,
That's true
of
too.
a pool of like
They don't
5,000?
have the time. They don't have the time to get to know you. Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, okay, I respect you. I respect what you're doing right now and like trying to get up there.
And that's the world we live in. I think you mentioned earlier, um, big bad pharma, as far as how mushrooms are helping people heal. People are starting to microdose and come off their antidepressants if possible, because people just don't like being on those drugs. But I'd like to talk um, a little bit about that, about how, like, I don't know if you've taken them specifically for maybe for moods or for depression or anything like that, or if it just came up when random moments. But I have people in my life that are trying to get off of antidepressants, because they like the initial feeling of when they start taking the medicine, where it
right.
helps initially, but having to keep being on it, it just totally, like, it diminishes your emotional state, your connection to some mental clarity, and all of that. And they're hoping to get off, trying their best to get off, and looking more towards psilocybin to
Mm.
help them with that. Do you have any experience with that, or do you know anyone that has experience with that, or what are your
Um, I
thoughts?
I feel really blessed. Like, as a kid, I wasn't put on any medication. My mother swears that I have ADHD and ADD, but I've never been put on anything. I
Mhm.
actually took Adderall for the first time, um, like a couple. a month ago, Adderall for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to write this paper and needed to get it done. Like, and I sat and I focused and I, was on the Adderall, but I remember feeling so disconnected from my body. Like, I didn't want to touch anyone. And I just kind of felt like I was like more mechanical. And I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about it, and she was like, Adderall is a very capitalistic drug. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, it makes you more productive, right? It lowers your, the thing that makes things more interesting, so that you're able to focus on one thing for longer and you're able to get something done.
Tedious tasks.
To accomplish tasks. So of course, like, from a pharmaceutical or anyone in positions of power, why wouldn't you want to be giving out this drug that makes people more focused? Like, it helps feed the rat race a little bit, right? Keeping people up, productive, going. Now, a drug like shrooms doesn't make you more productive. Not in that moment. You're probably laying somewhere in your brain. But it has, I believe, a more long-term effect, right? Like, if we can understand our intentions, really build a foundation of what our internal motivations are for those things, understand past traumas or processes, that can lay a foundation that we will be more productive. But in terms of money, it's not profitable, because, like, I was talking about before, like, you could take shrooms, you could charge it at, a certain price, but maybe that person doesn't have to trip again for another year, another 2 years. So if you're a pharmaceutical company, there's no way to gauge a certain amount of profit, because you're not giving out those monthly dosage. So in a way, shrooms are also kind of radical in fighting larger systems.
Fighting big pharma, for sure. Also, in a sense, you can also grow your own shrooms at home. How about that? Self-sufficient and happy.
Yeah, and I'm so frustrated that I think so much of this is the narrative around it too, right? Like, certain members of my family are on medication for depression, anxiety, for a bunch of other things. Yet I say that I've taken shrooms and maybe you could too, and it's like completely like, oh, no, like we would never put that in our body. Or it's kind of just like, oh, that's cute, like, you go on your little trip, do your little thing, and then, but we need to be putting these. And sometimes I listen and it sounds crazy. Like, I would hate to be putting this foreign thing that I don't really know in my body.
This pressed pill of chemicals.
but it's around this narrative, right, of like trusting in doctors and trusting in Western medicine more than alternative. Even this idea of calling things like yoga, meditation, psychedelics alternative medicine. Why does it have to be alternative?
Is it? You know what I mean?
Medicine. Like, I suffer from back problems. I do yoga so I can heal and manage my back problem pain. Like, that is my daily dose. You know what I mean? Do your stretches, like not eating meat. Like, it's a way to keep cleanse, like a medicine.
Very streamlined to me.
Right? It sounds so obvious, but then the psychedelic question comes in, and all of a sudden it's like we're talking about something different. It's not as taken seriously,
unfortunately. And that's a huge conversation, is you're trusting this pill versus trusting something that naturally is grown, and something you can even grow yourself, so you know exactly where it's coming from. You know what I mean? Where did that disconnect come from, where you don't trust yourself anymore? You know what I mean? And I think that's the bigger thing. That's the bigger conversation. It's just like, Like I have this conversation with my mom all the time, and my mom, she's not on. She doesn't take much medications at all. I mean, my dad, he has like arthritis and diabetes, and but I have a conversation with them about mushrooms or about ayahuasca, and they're like flipping out. She's also very religious, so she's just like, "What is this thing? Who is a shaman? Is he a witch doctor?" And I'm just like, "You don't understand." And I try to explain, but there is just this blockage where they shut off their ears, they shut off the understanding, and it's like, "No, this is very natural. This is something that will naturally bring you through something, and not just, squelch the symptoms of it, you know."
Right.
And the more I try to explain, the more they don't listen, and it's just a very difficult dynamic we have. But that happens with a lot of people.
Right. And I'll tell you, like, since being dating Maggie, my girlfriend,
Mhm.
and being in more social situations when we
Mhm.
start talking about psychedelics, and then she'll step up and she'll be like, I'm graduating from Columbia University and I'm studying this and I'm getting my psychotherapy degree and I'm gonna
Mhm.
work on psychedelic therapy. The fact that she said Columbia, that she's getting a degree, and like even the word therapy after the word psychedelic, it's like someone took
Jaw
a little
dropping.
lock pad off their ears and now
Mhm.
they're able to listen to with a little bit more open of a mind. Now, mind you, nothing that we've said has changed,
Mhm.
but it's just because that little like stigma in their head was broken that people that do drugs are all addicted and are all
Drug
bad, and it's going
addicts
to send you
and
down this crazy path
exactly.
of like addiction. So as much as I hate the fact that of the degrees and stuff, I value the importance of having people that are able to
Bridge that
be
gap for
the
sure.
yeah, the bridger of
Mm.
those gaps, because that's how the only way people are going to get over the river, right, is
It's
like
very true. Very true. Can I mention your neighbor? Yeah.
yes, please, yes.
Okay. So we were talking about this briefly before we start recording, but you were explaining to me that you have a neighbor that is just now getting interested in
Yeah,
psychedelics.
yeah, so we've become friends with our Jewish neighbors. They're like Orthodox Jewish. And my first time, I'm not Jewish,
Mhm.
kind of being exposed to like this culture, I've been learning a lot about what
Mhm.
they believe, kind of their own practices, seeing
Mhm.
how strict he is with like praying and different things. So,
Mhm.
um, and we'll get together and we'll dinner sometimes. And one of them, I think he's around 30, has been completely fascinated and interested with the concept of shrooms, and came in a bit wary when
Mhm.
Maggie mentioned psychedelic therapy, and then totally just started like picking her brain. And he's actually over there now. She's over there now taking him on his first trip.
Very
Um,
nice. His
but
very
it was
first trip.
his very first trip. Yeah.
It's
But it
beginning
was
of a
cra-
beautiful thing.
it is, and it was wild to watch that transformation of thought change in his head, of like this could be completely bad to like, oh, maybe this could help me. Oh, maybe I should just go try.
Hmm.
And we'll see what happens from there, but um that's why this podcast, I can't, like, it's so brilliant because it sometimes just does take a conversation,
It really does. It
and
really, really
and
does.
allowing yourself, just like my realization of allowing myself to think of a life other than being an actor, allowing yourself to ask the questions
Hmm.
and say things that maybe you feel embarrassed asking about, but ask them anyways because we're here.
Hmm. Yeah, or putting away those thoughts of should and shouldn't, like having those words not mean anything. They have way too much weight. Maybe just
Someone once
allow
told
it.
me should, would, could. We just need to cut those
Shoulda, woulda,
words.
coulda. Yeah.
Yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Okay. I love this idea of the lid coming off. And
Hmm.
just a couple weeks ago, I went on another trip, and healed I had a conversation with a
Mm-hmm.
friend that just, we needed to have the conversation, and we were able to have it, in the silence of being in our own space. And um I don't know why all the time, like why we couldn't have that conversation before,
Mm-hmm.
but something about being in that mental state, being calm enough and open enough to like, I really believe that shrooms can put us in a state where we can receive more information and perceive more information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if we can settle into that and sit there with it, so much healing can be done.
Absolutely.
And it's all us, you know what I mean? like
Mm-hmm.
like I said, when I was going on that, it's like it's all you, baby. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
needed to say what I needed to say, and she needed to say what she needed to say. Steam lifted off, and then we
Mm-hmm.
move forward. And those moments, like, it's like the healing that will do for our friendship is like
Yes.
long-term productivity.
Yes. Psychedelics has this way of bypassing the ego in such a way where we're not stopping, like say, you have a bad conversation with a friend and you're not you're essentially not friends for like a year, say. And all it takes is a simple, very humbled conversation of listening to each other and understanding each other's perspectives. And I think what psychedelics does is it alleviates that switch. It alleviates the ego where you don't need it. So you are allowed to be vulnerable and humbled in front of someone who you may or may not think is, says the right things or is doing the right thing, but you're still able to respect them. And they're obviously, whatever they're doing is their choice. And they're not doing it to disrespect you. It's just their perceived way of doing something. You know what I mean? And once we can, like, lift that lid, it all just comes out. All the understanding just comes out of there, and you're able to kind of get back to zero and get back to being friends. And that's why I like doing doing psychedelics with my friends, even friends that are very close to me and that I have great relationships with. I find that we find these more strains of connectedness that we have, and we just get closer and closer.
Yeah, it's such a it is connecting. Like, all of this is connecting to our deeper selves, connecting to the space, the world, the air around us, connecting to
Mm-hmm.
the energies, vibrations around us.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I sit in that spiral of introspection, I say, in one sense, it's all me, baby, but in another sense, it's all everything.
Yeah, but saying it's all me is saying it's all everything.
Yeah, like,
Everything is you. You are everything.
it's like sometimes I feel like when I can't even describe these things in words, like it makes I don't know if this is a video podcast, but like I hope
Yeah, it
people
is. It is. It is.
like moving my hands and like this.
If I can just have a conversation in hand movements, which you
Yeah,
can totally have on mushrooms, which I've definitely done before on acid,
definitely.
which is beyond anything I ever thought possible.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you find what is the difference for you between shrooms and acid in your personal
Oh, for
experience?
me, between shrooms and acid. So I have much more. No, about the same. I about the same experience with both of them. I started psychedelics much later in life. I didn't do them in my 20s or my teens. Um, so when I did mushrooms and acid after ayahuasca. So it's like and
Wow.
I was thinking I'm terrified of mushrooms and acid, and people were like, "You did ayahuasca? What are you talking about?" And I was just that uninformed. Um, but mushrooms and acid, I actually prefer mushrooms over acid. I do like acid in a sense where it can make things more vibrant. Like I had a few times where I went to like a bar, went to a club, went to a museum, went to the park, and it just had this very vibrant sort of saccharine feeling about it, which was interesting. It was just basically like a different perspective. It wasn't necessarily more introspective, not necessarily the work that I like to do when I'm taking a psychedelic, but it was just altering enough to where I can shift my view on a few things.
Mm.
Um, with mushrooms, it was completely introspective. It wasn't as visual. I didn't feel a lot. I didn't I didn't see any hallucinations or anything like that. But what I did have was my inner self coming up and being like, all these different things that you're worried about, let's condense them and let's talk about them. And in this very simplistic way, in a way where I'm not just like running around in circles in my own mind, making them more complicated than they actually are. Mushrooms simplify things, simplify them in a way that's easier to digest and I guess solve. I guess if there's something to solve, like I was telling you before, for my birthday when I had it at Cosm, um, I had all these thoughts and ideas swirling around about what I wanted to do with my life, what my purpose was, and it just simplified it as simple as possible, for lack of a better word. And it was just much easier to like understand what my purpose was and how it was possible to do what I wanted, what I needed to do, for my future. Yeah. So yeah, so mushrooms over acid any day for sure.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah,
gonna be the difference for me.
I feel like people can and do abuse acid more than shrooms. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's because acid is more accessible. I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is cheaper a lot of the times.
Mm.
Um
Oh, I know with mushrooms, it's just as far as taking them. Sometimes, if it's not, say, if it's not like in a small chocolate, if it's just like the whole mushroom, sometimes that can be a bit difficult to just ingest in general in large quantities. Some people get nauseous, some people just don't like the flavor. So that, I think that's a barrier within itself. With acid, it can just be a tab, a small piece of paper, or a liquid like on droplets. And that's so much easier to abuse because it's like, easily administered, easily to take more doses than recommended. And honestly, I've only had half a tab each time I've taken acid. Like I haven't taken any copious amounts or any heroic amounts or so. I've never had any of those crazy acid trip stories that are all over Reddit and the web and everything. But, but yeah, I do know people that have had like 4 or 5 tabs at a time, and I'm just like, why? And I asked them, how was their experience? What happened? And I think you had a great word that you used like 20 minutes ago, intention. um, Usually when people are taking like just much more than is needed, the intention isn't there, or maybe the intention is to just get fucked up, or the intention is to be out of your mind for a moment. In a sense, being out of your mind for a moment could be good if you just need to pop out,
right.
but continuously over and over on a regular basis, I don't see the benefit in that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I feel like if anyone's that's what I say to people, when they are curious about it and they want it, is I'm like, set that intention.
Mhm.
And I think when I see sometimes my friends that are just taking it blindly because it's a good time,
Mhm.
um, that seems the most unsafe to me, is not the
Mm.
actual drug itself, but
The habit behind it.
the habit or the state and intention of the person taking it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unsafe part.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think it has to do, ironically, with that person taking it seriously. you
Mm-hmm.
know we're trying to get people to listen to us and take the drug seriously.
Mm-hmm.
People that haven't taken it at all, but then I think there's some people that are with already inside, already taking the drug, that aren't taking it as seriously either. And then it's like it's like, why wouldn't we want to, we're sitting there, we're able to perceive all this information. Like, it's almost our responsibility now to do something with that information and connect the dots so that we can move forward, so that we can be more productive, healthier humans.
Yes, absolutely. More connected humans for sure. And I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I wanted to start something like this is purely for connection. Connecting with people, yeah, that aren't able to have these conversations that we're having right now. I know for me, before I started going to the Psychedelic Society that I'm part of, I had no one to talk to. Like, I had friends that were open and friends that would listen, but it was like that level of understanding wasn't there. And they're being kind and listening, like they weren't shaming me or anything like that. But it was just frustrating for me that I felt like I had all these experiences that I couldn't share, more or less just with words. But when you're in a psychedelic community, like you're saying before, like you're doing all this and it's like, this is the feeling. And I was like, I was right there with you. I know exactly what you're saying. Even though you're not using words, I know exactly what you're saying and what you're feeling. And that's something within itself. So connection is something that is not necessarily overlooked, but I think connection now more than ever, especially during after 2020 shutdown, is something that people are just so desperate for right now. And I'm really hoping that this podcast, this organization and your podcast that you're starting, will allow people to come together and talk and be able to talk and have people understand them and not second guess them and know exactly where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Retweet on connection, engagement, community.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. That's why I feel like shrooms were put on this planet maybe in the first place. And if you want to reach me on the internet, I'm at Handcraft Creeps.
Yes.
I do crochet work, and my homegirl is embroidery. Host all women open mic nights as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, you sent me I think for, was it last weekend? Last Friday?
Yeah, Friday. So I'm all about trying to connect people and give women confidence and platforms where they feel safe and to come up and share. So
awesome.
You can also reach out to me. I know with COVID, they're kind of scattered more, but
yeah. Well, I mean, indoor dining is open, so I mean, no qualms over here. Plus, I definitely want to start having events outside of the Zoom space.
A virtual world.
Yeah, I mean, a virtual is cool, but also cool to some things you just need in person. So, and helps with connection for sure. But thank you so very much. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. And I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Keep doing what you're doing. I love it. And I'm sure I'll see you sometime soon.
Yes.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.